Good evening. Tonight on Explain and Verify, we turn our attention to South Africa's public transport lifeline, the minibus taxi industry, and the fast-growing e-hailing services now with commuters caught in the middle of violent clashes. Can regulation bring peace to this billion-rand battle? Samgele?
Well, Bongiwe, in August was a very difficult month for the transport sector, following a series of brutal attacks on e-hailing drivers. As we've seen, tensions escalated after the brutal killing of the 27-year-old e-hailing driver Mthokozi Simvelase in Soweto on the 13th of August. By mid-month, police were already probing 13 cases involving deaths of e-hailing drivers. The violence is linked to the feud between taxi operators and ride-hailing platforms. That essentially shows that South Africa's 90 billion rand minibus industry, with around 300,000 drivers, dominates the public transport. It carries 82% of the monthly commuter trips, moving around 16 million people daily, far outpacing buses and trains. For instance, if you look at some of the slides that we have, e-hailing arrived in South Africa in 2013, with Uber later joining by rivals like Bolt, which now serves over 1 million users. Uber remains the most dominant player with more than 2 million users. The service has more than 50,000 drivers on its ride and food delivery platforms. For instance, if you look at e-hailing South Africa services, Uber, 2 million plus active users. Then you go to Uber, 100,000 income opportunities since 2013. 100,000 income opportunities since 2013. Then Uber, 52,000 drivers. Bolt has 1 million active users, Bongiwe, in the country. But the sector is not been without problems. Passengers have complained about robberies and sexual assaults linked to e-hailing rides, while app drivers say they face harassment and hijackings. Many also complain that the high fuel cost and platform commissions leave them struggling to make a living. Still, commuters are willing to pay more than e-hailing drivers' door-to-door convenience to avoid long walks and queues at taxi rank. That has deepened tensions with the minibus industry. Initially, taxi operators did not anticipate that e-hailing would grow to a serious contender in the public transport sector. Note the Department of Transport, according to its spokesperson, Mr. Colin Msibi. Let's just listen, Bongiwe, to what Mr. Colin Msibi had to say about these two particular sectors, the taxi minibus industry and the e-hailing industry.
The e-hailing service came into being in South Africa. We never really imagined that it was going to be such a big service. So what it meant is that we needed to then amend the National Land Transport Act.
The taxi industry is regulated under the National Land Transport Act, but weak enforcement has left many feeling its operators above the law. With e-hailing services now part of the system, the Act has been amended to incorporate newcomers, improve commuter safety, and curb violent clashes. According to the Transport Department, the amendment is due to take effect on the 12th of September. Whether these measures could have protected Mthokozi Simvelase is an open question. His family has been left destituted by his death, which came just after he had started working as an e-hailing operator. But this, Bongiwe, is one of the key factors that you are seeing with the eThekwini strike currently, which our colleague Simpuya Makanya is covering. You saw Mkiza, who's the chairperson of Santako in that particular area of the eThekwini municipality, just now in that press briefing with his 5 other regional chairpersons in the various districts of that particular municipality of eThekwini and KwaZulu-Natal, speaking extensively about how this taxi indaba that will incorporate the minibus industry and the e-hailing services, and that the Minister of Transport, Baba Creasy, within the next 21 days will gazette the various regulations that will conduct and operate and force the e-hailing services to operate under, because that has been a bone of contention, that e-hailing does not have a proper structure that governs it, proper representation. They also don't have a government statute that governs how they essentially operate within the country. Let's just listen to what some of the people we've spoken to had to say about these particular services of e-hailing and the clashes between the minibus industry and the e-hailing industry.
What is more horrific is that we have been informed that he was burnt to ashes and only recovered just one of his bone. That is what will be buried. Maybe we would have found closure if they could have at least spared his body after shooting him. Currently, we have no money to bury. We have nothing. We don't even have money to fetch his remains from Johannesburg. We are in disbelief and confused.
That was Mthokozi Sikuzwa, who was a family member of Mthokozi Mvelase. The South African National Taxi Council has condemned Mthokozi's murder allegedly by rogue taxi operators, but says it cannot take responsibility. Police investigations are still underway on this particular matter that is, Bongiwe, a very serious case, particularly by these two industries at war with one another. Remember that it's very prominent in Soweto, particularly around that Maponya Mall area from time to time. And also I remember some time back, about 2-3 years ago, around Protea Glen as well. There was a scuffle where vehicles were burnt between the minibus industry and the taxi and the e-hailing industry. And in most instances, vehicles that are burnt are the e-hailing vehicles and not the taxis that are burnt by the e-hailing operators. It's for the first time that I saw recently in Soweto where taxi was essentially burnt in retaliation to the death of Mthokozi Mvelase in that particular area of Soweto. But it is a nationwide problem. For instance, if you go to areas such as Gugulethu in the Western Cape, in the Cape Metro, e-hailing services don't want to go to Langa, to Nyanga, to Gugulethu, to Mfuleni, to Delft, and a number of areas around District 6 as well in that particular metro of the Western Cape because of fear of being hijacked and their vehicles taken from them, which is some of the issues that needs to be properly regulated within the country. There are a number of people who will tell you that they can't get an Uber in the townships in the Western Cape later on in the evening, and they need to request these particular Ubers much earlier on. But let's just listen to what some of South Africa's law enforcement agencies and some of the taxi operators who've been used and some of the South African customers who've been using these e-hailing services on what they've had to say that essentially has broken out between the e-hailing industry and also the minibus industry.
We are attacked by taxi drivers or taxi industry. We are mistreated by the same clients that we are picking up. We are mistreated by the same e-hailing companies that we are working for.
I am a single mom who supports 3 kids alone. I don't have a job. I don't have anything, and I know how to drive. I don't have a car. I have to think, well, let me go and hire a car and do something so that I can put a bread on the table for my kids. And then somebody come and kill me on the street.
We are saying we're tired of taxi drivers. We're tired of the taxi industry violating our mothers and fathers. They are bringing their taxis, which are jalopizi korokor. Our grandmothers are suffering of talama plastic, and they are forced to go to bangene kuma taxi angeko endleleni right.
Client also has a choice. Horinyogonamela e-hailing, Bolt or InDrive or Uber, as well as a taxi.
In Gauteng, Roads and Transport MEC Kidiboni Diale is working with taxi associations and e-hailing operators to resolve licensing disputes and to calm the tensions. Whether these efforts, alongside the amended National Land Transport Act, can stabilize the sector remains to be seen and is uncertain, Bongiwe, at this point in time. For now, e-hailing is expected to keep on growing, possibly reaching 7 billion rand in revenue and 14 million users by 2028. Still very small compared to the 90 billion rands taxi industry. With billions at stake, passengers are left to ask, will the future of transport in South Africa be defined by innovation or intimidation? That is some of the key points. For instance, if you look at the interview our colleague Mbali Mthethwa had last week with one of the Santaco chairpersons in Ekurhuleni, who was basically saying that he does not want to speak to Andile Mgwevu, the MMC of transport in Ekurhuleni. He does not want to speak to Kidiboni Diale, the MEC of transport in Gauteng. He does not want to speak to Panyaza Lesufi. He wants the president of the country, Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa. He wants the Minister of Transport, Barbara Creasy, to come and engage with him. They were threatening a provincial-wide strike at that particular point in time, where commuters will have stranded in Ekurhuleni, in Kempton Park, in Germiston, in Boksburg, in that particular strike that took place within that particular area, after the Premier of the province, Panyaza Lesufi, ordered the impounding of unsafe vehicles on the roads of Gauteng that are owned by Santaco and other taxi associations within the province of Gauteng. A similar situation that Mayor Cyril Xaba is dealing with in the eThekwini municipality, alongside the city manager Musa Mpele and also Siboniso Duma Mthombeni, the MEC of transport in that province of KwaZulu-Natal. But Minister Barbara Creasy has her work cut out for her within these particular 21 days of gazetting those rules and regulations that will ultimately govern the e-hailing industry and have an association that will ultimately culminate, that will represent the e-hailing industry within the country, whether it be Bolt, whether it be Uber as well. And that will be the true test of how they govern this growing multi-million rand industry that may ultimately by 2028 compete with the taxi industry.
The true test indeed, Samkele. Innovation or intimidation. That's how we wrap up this week's edition of Explain and Verify. Samkele Masego is back next week, same time, same place.